Let's get Samir back on, right? Samir Arora, founder and fund manager at Helios. Samir, good to have you with us here. Thank you for waiting. Appreciate it very much. So what is top of mind to you, tariffs or the consumption boost here, and what will drive markets from here?
So on a relative basis, it will be the budget, in the sense that actually the budget was good and we'll talk about it. But if the overall markets are down a lot, then India may outperform because A, it's not directly affected, and B, don't worry about markets like Taiwan because they have been closed for a week. So if you just look at how TSMC ADR was trading during this period because of NVIDIA and others, and then the TSMC local fall. So don't get totally carried away. A little bit you're allowed to get carried away. But the point is that the budget was good and this tariff situation is bad. But the tariff situation doesn't look as if it's going to be there for 6 months and 9 months. I mean, these guys have to be able to demonstrate a little bit about the demands of Mr. Trump on fentanyl and all. And I read that Canada is saying, see, we bought these 4 helicopters and we bought some guns and whatever else they can demonstrate. At least this doesn't look like this itself is a trade war forever, because the ask is not related to trade as of now. It is related to reducing immigrants and drugs, which actually in theory are easier to show by saying we have, more forces, more tracking, more inspections, whatever.
So it's not permanent, and that's exactly the point that I was making earlier as well, that it's easier to do. I'm surprised why they've not done it. Put out a statement, strong statement saying that we're going to do everything, all of this. I don't know what's the problem.
And I think it's because they are upset in general with each other. But actually, it's not started yet. It is supposed to start tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I think Trump has just tweeted or whatever has commented that he's meeting them or talking to both these guys today. And China, realizing that this is just a bit of drama, has not said anything back.
Yeah.
So it is bad, of course, but it's not like this is it and now, therefore, this is like 1930 when there were trade wars and markets fell. But right now, part will overshadow the fact that it was a good budget.
But the Mexican president's statement was quite hard-hitting and frank and fair. I mean, like I said, Mexico has been calling out US right back, saying that you're not able to police your streets and what's going on there. We are doing enough. And she went on to say that cooperation is fine, but essentially bullying is not. And I think that's why these countries haven't immediately buckled under pressure.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's about the tone tonality.
Now. It's a bit of ego. It's a bit of ego, but obviously Mexico was at fault. There is a doubt on that. But of course, US also has to control. But obviously, I mean, you don't believe all these guys are coming in and drugs are coming in because there is demand. Obviously, the other side has not been. Otherwise, how can you have these cartels and people running those cities and whatever movies you've seen?
So
it is both ways, but I agree with you that this, if they want, can be done. I think plus let's see.
Yeah. So let's see if some of those ego issues can be resolved in these parlays that will happen. Now I'm sure the diplomatic channels are, working in overdrive. And the best part is that China hasn't taken a very strong stance, an anti-stance. They're saying we'll take it to the WTO. WTO disputes run in years. So we all know how that goes. But Samir, having said that, there is the immediate reaction to play out. Sort of how do you look at that? Because for us, now I was trying to find silver linings. The only silver lining I could see for India was that finally the US market is buckling. Maybe for a short.
That's also one positive.
So your thoughts on that?
No, so that is one of the points, but I thought we were talking budget first. But that is, of course, important because this obvious thing that you will sell emerging markets and go, of course, they will say even more it proves because currency has strengthened. US and Indian currency right now looks like 40 basis points down, about 86, 90 or something. So these things are now, you can spin it both ways. But in general, beyond a point that the fact that you can't put everything in one basket, particularly for A, global investors, B, long-term investors, and C, there are fund managers who cannot put it in US, they themselves. They will not go to their investor and say, please take my money and put it in US. So the emerging market fund, the Asian fund, the Asian emerging market fund, global fund. And then there is this other side of people saying US has gone up so far, too much, exceptionalism, US will not last. Ruchir Sharma keeps saying that there'll be some followers of that thesis also. So beyond a point, that trade is not so important that, people will take money from India and go to US. I think FI selling is not beyond a point a big negative. It is that whether India is doing well or not. And then there is some correction of excesses and stuff like that, which clearly seems to have been done.
All right. Hi, Samir. Good to see you. And Samir, since you spoke about FI selling, do you think it's getting to the fag end? That was the hope at the end of 2024. And bam, 2025, they're selling even more. Do you think,
So actually, if you look at it, look at it, September was a massively positive month for India, some 7-8 billion positive. And October was negative, some 10 billion.
Yeah.
Then November was sort of zero-ish, 1-2 billion minus, and December was plus.
Yes.
And again, Jan is big negative. So now we have to make some story. We can't say random. So the story which has to be consistent is that in October, they were thinking that US positioning and, Trump winning and dollar strengthening and all that, which happened. Then December, they were positive again, and Jan, again negative. One reason has to be India related. That Indian results came out very bad. Because if you see, Taiwan was not negative. It's an emerging market. It is an anti-US. I think Korea was negative, but not a lot. Basically, the entire emerging market negative in January. I think January or maybe a little, February just started. So must be January. Was I think some $7 billion negative, and all of it was India. So now if India improves or it corrects, or generally some stable thing is found, this continuous selling does not have to happen. Then it'll turn to buying also. So I'm saying the default in general is not that foreigners sell. The default is they buy and sell, but in the end, they mostly buy. Mostly means last 25 years, even if you see last year, there was sort of net zero. Now, why were they net zero? Because they sold in secondary and they bought primary. Now, why did they buy primary? Because the primary stocks are different. They are not the old banks, the consumer, the Reliance, the whatever. They are these IT type companies or tech companies, whatever, this consumer tech or fintech or whatever tech. And so out of your $800-900 billion, you have switched some $10-12 billion to the new age kind of stuff. So what is so unreasonable about it, except that is done between secondary and primary? If it was done between secondary and secondary, you would have said flows have been flat for last year.
Right. Got it. Samir, so for viewers who are watching, right, there is a boost to consumption. People are still invested in capex, infra type of names. There is one view which says that this could be, 6 months down the line, we could look back and say, well, this was the inflection point. Not because it is 1 lakh crore and is going to do, but basically it was a shift in focus, it was a shift in message. So the style factor will change from what you should look and do here. So I just wanted you to your comments on that, whether it will really be so.
I think it is one of the best budgets that we've seen in many, many years, and I tweeted it's a dream budget.
Yeah.
So first thing is that you normally want money with the public rather than with government. It should just be the general thumb rule of looking at anything, that money with public is better than money with the government. Number two, you have not taken money from one group and given it to the other, which would make it, that, you are deciding. Here they are saying, you just give us less money. It's not that you've taken it from one, given it to the other. Third is, you have not said that, you've cut a tax rate across the board, therefore the rich will get much more. It has come to the correct audience in that sense. Other than that, on infra and all, so then one more issue people I see in the reports that I get and on Twitter and all, only 3% people are affected, only 4% are affected. So if the government announced that there'll be a new road being made between, say Faridabad and Meerut, only 2% of Indians will use it. The South guy will say, how do I care you made a road there? Everything that you do, only 2-3% people, 5% people are affected. But the reality is that there is no capacity to invest more in a road because the big roads are being made. And if anybody believes that a road that is not doing well, is not made well, is because of money, or is it because of management, or is it because of corruption, or is it? So learn from the US. I'm telling you, Donald Trump is going to be a massive positive influence everywhere in the world, including in India. Yeah. Because you will realize that tax cuts and efficient government and cutting expenditure and all that. And secondly is, for whatever reason, which is now history, this year money could not be spent on infra and could not be spent maybe a little bit on defense. So now next year, what is the point of saying I will give 25% more budget to that section? It is better to say I will implement what has been done. But the reality at the end of the day is that money with the public is the best way. And in this case also, since there is a temporary or cyclical or short-term slowdown, it is better to deal with a temporary or cyclical or short-term up by saying, hey, take money. Or
No, but Samir, this
instead of
is...
saying, I will make an infra which will take 5 years to implement.
And this is
which
now...
also is needed, but
No,
separately.
the point is this 1 lakh is not one time, it's recurring every year.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully.
So you get 4 or 5 times that the spending.
Yeah.
Because you can
got
buy
it.
car, you can buy durable,
Absolutely. So briefly, Samir, if you can, but the point is that you said they're not taking money away. Actually, I'm not sure if that is true because capex growth, right, capital allocation is expected to, be,
10%.
10%. And if you look at tax assumption growth, right, income tax collection growth is assumed at 14%. If you add back that 1 lakh crore, it's 20 to 23%. So generally, it's very possible that expenditure will slip. And where will it slip? Mostly in capex again. So the question is, will we see some derating in infra type of names? And switching is always difficult to try and it's because capex, infra, etc. has worked for so many years. But
Of course it derate.
Yeah.
That is why I'm smiling. I have been betting against that because those companies don't deserve 40 and 50 multiples because nowhere in the world, consumer also don't deserve, but consumer have had it for 50 years, so what to do? Or 30 years, higher multiples in India and in other countries also, higher in consumer than in infra and road building and water treatment. So that is just the reality. And therefore, I read some report, which is a good report, that you can move a little bit from value to growth. There has been too big a difference on winning an order, you make a stock go up. So that will definitely happen. The derating will happen because the money is ultimately fixed. Even FIIs will simultaneously try to churn, even if there is net positive, if there is. Absolutely.
So Samir, let me ask you this, because, in India, we always swing from one extreme to the other, right? It's always extreme pessimism, then extreme optimism. Let me ask you this. Now, as the street starts chasing these consumer stocks, what is the PE you are willing to give and pay for to, say, a consumer staples company? And then let's talk about one of these internet consumer companies.
Look,
the question is, how long will you buy them? At what price?
Consumer staple company, so we will not buy only.
Oh, okay.
Because consumer staple is ultimately, you may say they have more money, less money, but most of these guys could afford those consumer staples that they are supposed to buy more of. And it's still a very small percent of the audience that buys consumer staples. But consumer durables they could buy, and cars and all they could buy. But we don't like the sectors, but they could buy. But in other sectors, which is these food and all, the growth rate is too high. So if you just change the growth rate by 1 more year, or you change the fact that the margin is a little bit better because more people are doing, and then suddenly these valuations can change a lot. But again, remember, we only have 12-14% in all of them together. And we consider that as being like aggressive, and you also, and world considers that we are aggressive. So within that constraint, that context, it is still highly bullish. Actually, the number one most bullish, may I add, was actually Zomato, because not one person in the country has understood except me that what was that one line that was said. So Mrs. Sitharaman in the interview said that these gig workers, and I panicked. I said, shit, now they're going to say something about, treating them as employees or whatever. She said that all these guys can enroll in some system, whatever she said.
Yes,
we will give their insurance. So please remember, 2 hours before or 5 days before or 1 month ago, we were saying, these workers are exploited. These companies are competing with kiranas. These companies are creating this distress and that distress. And now you are saying the employees that these guys have hired, or not even employees, whatever you call them.
But Samir, many of those,
recognized.
Well, let's see. Many of those things and those actions can always happen outside the budget. We'll have to wait and watch this space. But we've understood your point.
No. Yeah. That way, if I say if anything can happen, tomorrow there can be war between India and Pakistan, so we should sell. Tomorrow China can do the if. Don't say anything with if.
Okay,
today is what has been done.
Samir,
if you can add anything in life. So may I just tell you a joke before I go? Yeah. So one guy asked another guy, how are you feeling? He said, I'm good. He said, what if a truck hits you? Then he said, I will not be good. So if you can add anything in life to be circumspect.
Samir, 30 seconds, where will that money go? Where will people send their money, you think? Cars, flying, foreign vacations, this 1 lakh crore, where will it go, you think?
1 lakh crore. No, I think some of it will go into savings, say 20%. But before that, there was nothing negative on financials, and in fact, maybe positive, independent of these US issues now. that you would have had an interest rate cut or liquidity. There was nothing done wrong to IT guys, but those stocks fell to 2%. So I'm saying generally, the good thing about this budget was that nobody was harmed in the making of this budget. Like we say in a movie, that no animal was harmed in the making of this film. Nobody was harmed and some were benefited. So that's okay.
Well, Samir, we are going to remember this because it's not very often.
1 minute. He's not answered the question. Where will this money go, Samir?
So I'm saying,
three sectors.
No, it could go. See, it's a little bit of an upper end benefit. So it has to go into things which are not so very basic also. Because you will say that the guys up to 10 lakh or anyway, or 8 lakh or anyway not paying or paying very little. So the benefit is a little bit upper middle, whatever you want to call it. So it has to be travel. It has to be savings. It has to be these car consumer durable types. As I said, we are not buying those, but they could. But we are not going to, for this basis, buy some soap and shampoo maker as if they were, waiting for this.
All right, fair enough. Samir, thank you very much for joining us. Great speaking with you, as always. And, come back again because this tariff thing will continue and there'll be lots of headlines.